I would say the most beneficial part is probably the beginning where they explain the overview and the kind of concept behind what they're gonna show throughout the instructional. And then if you're watching like a Gordon Ryan instructional where they have the rolling footage, I would say the rolling footage, especially when they're talking over the rolling footage and explaining what they're doing, those two aspects are, I think, the most important part.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. It's your host, Travis, and today I have the brilliant mind behind Less Impressed, More Involved BJJ over on YouTube. With almost 50,000 YouTube subscribers and over 4 million channel views, Jake Luigi is known for his high-quality BJJ analysis of top-level competitors, and his quality is second to none. In this episode, we will explore Jake's love for the analytical side of jiu-jitsu, pros and cons of instructionals, what makes a good instructional, how to tell if you are spending your money wisely, and if the instructional that you're buying is legit, and so much more. So whether you are a seasoned practitioner or a curious beginner, Jake's channel has something for everyone, and I highly recommend you go check him out in the description below. Go subscribe to him. Also, don't forget to go follow us on Instagram and everywhere. Go join El Bros community over on Facebook. Link is going to be down in the description below. And make sure you guys leave us a 5-star review wherever you're going. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching at home. Let me know what instructionals you watch down in the comments below and who your favorite instructional people are. And we'll catch you later. Peace. Jake, how's it going today, man? Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I've been talking to you for a while now on Instagram and stuff like that for a couple months. Jordan Pressinger actually pointed me your way. And at first, when I found your YouTube page, it wasn't for me. No offense. Because at that point, I wasn't very big into the analytical side of jiu-jitsu and competition and stuff like that. But then I actually started watching him more. And I was like, man, this dude is so legit, man. Your YouTube channel is incredible. If people haven't heard of it, it's Less Impressed, More Involved. And it's great, man. So I'm glad we finally got to come on board together. And you just had me on your podcast, so thank you for that too. And I'm glad that we're going to be able to have a cool discussion today. I kind of want to cover, instructionals for beginners, your background in jiu-jitsu and whatnot. And but all that's like foresighting. So let's just get into who you are for the people at home that don't know you, and how'd you got into jiu-jitsu and everything.
Yeah, so like you said, we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad we finally made it happen. But just a little background on me. I started doing jiu-jitsu after college, so that was in 2015. So I've been doing it for like 8 years now, and I'm a purple belt. But out of those 8 years, a year and a half was COVID, and then after COVID, my wife and I moved to this remote island of Hawaii called Lanai. It's next to Maui, and there wasn't any jiu-jitsu out here. So now it's kind of starting to develop, but that's kind of when I started doing the YouTube thing when we moved out here, just to kind of stay involved with jiu-jitsu. And here we are.
So you and I have similar backgrounds in starting jiu-jitsu. Your first academy was just like mine. I found this out when I came on, 1-800-BJJ help. And we both started in brand new academies, basically 99% brand new practitioners. How did that fall into line? How did you end up in that situation?
Yeah, so I moved to the Bay Area and in California, and I just happened to move into an apartment, and literally right across the street was a jiu-jitsu school. So I just walked in there one day after work and signed up. And it was literally like the grand opening sign is like, on the wall and all that good stuff. Like, we'll give you a free gi if you sign up kind of deal. So I was like, okay, sure. So yeah, it was just kind of a right place, right time, I guess.
So what made you move to the Bay Area?
Work. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just work. Nothing. Yeah.
Did you have like since kind of like you alluded to, your YouTube channel, and I did too at the beginning. Do you have like an analytical, like engineering background or something like that to have such like a deep look into technique and whatnot?
I feel like since growing up, I feel like we probably all have similar stories. Like we gravitate more towards, numbers or more towards artistic things and things like that. I was definitely always a math person. And then in college, I studied finance. So that was very math oriented and a lot of like Excel sheets and stuff like that. And then after college, I did nothing to do with my degree at all and nothing to do with math. I was a project manager. And so I would say like growing up, I was very numbers oriented and very analytical and tended to be more like reserved, kind of like fit the proper stereotype of like the analytical person you would think of. So I would say it's something I've always gravitated towards, but I haven't really had any like proper training in it, which is, kind of difficult when I have like this platform now and I'm trying to kind of break into this space and people are like sending me all this like, oh, you should do statistics like this. And it's like, yeah, I've never heard of like any of this stuff. So it's a high mountain I'm trying to climb here, but you got to just take it one step at a time, I guess.
Has starting your YouTube channel, has it like reignited that love for numbers and analyzing and like breaking things down? Obviously, right? Because I mean, you're at like what 50,000 subscribers now and like hundreds of videos, and there has it like reignited something inside you that you just want to keep going?
I would say so because I definitely think that I'm not someone who's going to be like a world champion at jiu-jitsu. But I do think that it's something that like a way that I can make a difference pretty much in the jiu-jitsu space. And that does kind of help ignite and keep me going a bit, kind of finding how I can help people and just kind of find my niche in this jiu-jitsu space.
Yeah, finding purpose in jiu-jitsu outside of a belt or outside of I just talked about this on my last episode, and it was one of the things that I learned over the last 100 episodes, 4 years of podcasting, is finding a purpose of helping people really keeps you motivated to want to keep showing up on the mats, or whether it's anything in life. If you can find a purpose outside of a selfish one, I mean, every purpose is kind of selfish, right? Because it's all towards like filling your own cup in a way of filling out someone else's cup. But I think it's a very powerful thing helping others. And in jiu-jitsu, it's cool because you can see, I mean, when you run a YouTube channel, it's not like you can see right away, but getting those messages of people saying like, hey man, like your analysis really helped me out. It really broke down how I can do this and that. And that purpose of helping others, man, it's kind of intoxicating sometimes when you really start to like break that barrier down and people actually start listening to you, or you're making an impact on others. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very, I'm sure you know too, it's a very lonely experience making like content and stuff. So it is nice to know that you're not just sitting in front of your dual screens trying to like watch all these videos just for yourself, especially me, because like I'm not really doing jiu-jitsu all that much, to be honest. So it's nice to know that it's not for nothing.
So who was your first like online content creator that kind of ignited this desire to want to create content?
Honestly, it's a really good question. I would say the channel that I always get kind of lumped into, that I wouldn't necessarily say I started out like, oh, I'm going to do what they're doing, but who I'm referring to is BJJ Scout. I kind of get lumped into that category, which is completely understandable. They kind of like paved the way for the like analytical breaking down competition footage type of YouTube channel. But I wouldn't necessarily say like I watched a ton of their videos or anything, you know. I've watched a few, like especially the leg lock ones when I was trying to figure it out. But I would say I wasn't the biggest like YouTube person, honestly, before I became a content creator. And I didn't like study all that much material like outside of class before like Danaher came out with his instructionals, and then it kind of just like blew my mind. And I was like, man, there's a lot more out here than my jiu-jitsu school, you know? So it's a really good question. I would say now I watch, Jordan's episodes, all the time. I think his quality is just unmatched. And even though it's kind of a different niche and a different style of video, I think we can all kind of learn a lot to the way he's navigating and kind of blazing the trail for us YouTubers that are kind of going behind him. It's just as far as like, sponsorships and production quality and partnerships. And like, he's just kind of, he's paving the way for sure.
Yeah, I love Jordan's content. It's helped me out quite a bit. And, sometimes people kind of get a little bit of hesitancy when people start putting things behind paywalls. But everything that I've ever gotten that I've paid for from Jordan, it's great. Like his theory course, I've got his half guard instructional off of BJJ Fanatics. And one, it's because I want to support a friend. He's helped the podcast me immensely. We've talked about this too. And not only that, but it's cool finding instructors or people that you can just tell they have a passion for it, and they really sit down and think about the quality of how they're going to say it and how they're going to show it. Because a lot of people out there, they don't do that, right? They'll just like put a camera in front of them and they're like, this is the technique. Thanks. You know what I mean? It's like, well, wait a second. There's a lot of nuance to this, or there's a lot more you can be explaining to that. And I think Jordan does a great job of doing that. And like you mentioned, the production quality too. What lessons have you learned since starting your YouTube channel, and then kind of creating content?
It's a really good question. I would say that the first lesson I probably learned is that production quality is great, but you don't need it, kind of thing. Like, I legitimately started with my computer and my headphones that I plugged in, and I was just like recording with that. Yeah. And I still to this day use just like mostly free software. I've invested in a microphone, and
which sounds
that's
great.
Pretty much it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, that's the same thing with me. People ask, what products I use or equipment I use, and this has been everything I have has been over 4 years. So I've pieced it together, over the last 4 years, and most of the time, dude, your phone is a phenomenal thing. The microphone that you can get on a pair of headphones is great, right? I use DaVinci Resolve for editing. It's free. It's literally like the standard for TV production and whatnot. And, there's not a lot of stuff out there that you have to pay for, especially YouTube. YouTube's free. You can literally use everything you have and upload straight to YouTube, and it won't cost you a dime. And I think people see people like Jordan and then, a little bit of me and these other people that have been slowly chipping away at increasing quality 1% at a time. And they're like, oh my God, man, if I get into content creation, I need this super nice camera. I need an amazing microphone. It's like, you don't, man. It's much easier than that. I promise. Like, if you have a good message, people will show up.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of a gift and a curse that the barrier to entry is so low. Because it just leads to a lot of clutter, a lot of garbage, honestly, out there to kind of sift through to get to the good stuff. So hopefully that's where people. Honestly, that's what I'm trying to help people with, is just trying to like point people in the right direction and be like, hey, this is worth looking into, and if you have some time, you should probably watch this or practice these techniques because this is what's working at the highest level.
Yeah. So let's go into that. But first, I want to know, why Less Impressed, More Involved? Where did that come from?
Yeah. So basically, my YouTube channel started after I got back from a fishing trip from Alaska, and I was with my uncle. And every time, I broke I'm not a good fisherman. But every time I like broke my line or whatever, I would have to basically like walk to him with my pole and be like, hey, I need a new hook, kind of thing. So I felt very like hopeless. And I was like, man, next time I want to like study before and like know how to tie some knots and things like that. So at the time I was listening to Matthew McConaughey's book called Green Lights. And he was talking about when his dad died, how it was kind of the time for him to step up and kind of like be a man, pretty much. And he said it was time to start being less impressed by the things his dad was doing and start becoming more involved and like figuring out how to like navigate through his life instead of just being like impressed with the people that he put up on pedestals. So he wrote, like, I think he said he wrote it in like a tree or something. He just wrote less impressed, more involved. And that was kind of the like milestone where he like, you know, turned over that leaf and was trying to like start down that path. So it just kind of like resonated with me, and it like kind of clicked with the sense that I was like going to start learning how to tie some knots. So I just named my YouTube channel Less Impressed, More Involved, not thinking that it was going to become anything. And like the first maybe like 5 videos are just me tying knots on the video on the YouTube channel.
Also, you started off as a fishing channel.
Yeah, it was like a knot tying channel. And like it wasn't just fishing, because I was also learning how to hunt. So it was like how to hang your meat in the backcountry after you like, you know, harvest an animal. So it was like how to like hoist up meat into a tree and stuff. So it's like weird content like that we're getting like 5 views, and most of them are probably like my mom. And then I made one video about Marcelo Garcia, and that video I think got like 17,000 views or something like that.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I haven't made a knot tying video since.
What's up, guys? Are you tired of grappling body hair on and off the mats? Well, have no fear, because we have a solution that will keep you rolling smoothly and in style, thanks to Manscaped. Picture this: you're about to step onto the jiu-jitsu mats, ready to dominate and submit all your opponents. But wait, what's that? Your unruly body hair. That's why you need Manscaped, the global leader in men's grooming. With their precision engineering tools, you could tame the hairiest situations and grapple yourself to victory. Imagine executing the perfect armbar, all while knowing your bald hair is trying to sneak in a sneaky triangle choke. Thanks to the Lawnmower 4.0, you can easily eliminate that unwanted hair with this cutting-edge technology. It's like a black belt for body hair. So to my fellow BJJ practitioners, whether you're a white belt or a black belt, let Manscaped be your secret weapon on and off the mats. Go to manscaped.com and use code ETP20 for 20% off and free shipping. That's ETP20 at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. And with Manscaped, you'll be a force to reckon with on the mats and in the mirror. So at what belt color did you start your YouTube channel, the jiu-jitsu side of it?
Purple.
Purple?
Yeah. Purple.
So what are like the pros and cons of instructional? Let's kind of like jump into your reviews on instructional, obviously, because you do a lot of analysis of high level competition, instructionals, basically anything that has to do with jiu-jitsu and how we can get better at it. What are some of the pros and cons of someone watching an instructional?
Yeah, I would say this is kind of changed over the past, I would say, 6 months for myself. I'd say my answer would have been much different 6 months ago. But now I would say the most beneficial part is probably the beginning, where they explain the overview and the kind of concept behind what they're going to show throughout the instructional. And then if you're watching like a Gordon Ryan instructional where they have the rolling footage, I would say the rolling footage, especially when they're talking over the rolling footage and explaining what they're doing, those two aspects are, I think, the most important part. And then when they show you all the like little details and techniques, I would say that's the third most important part, which I think a lot of people kind of just like try and skip right to the fancy techniques that they want to learn and learn all the little details. But I definitely think that is not as important as people say. But at the same time, I also think it is like really important. So like it's kind of like yeah, it's something I'm still trying to figure out and balance myself. But I was listening to, do you know who Owen O'Flanagan is?
I do not.
Gotcha. Shout out Owen. He's
I'm not a student of the art. It's really bad. I have a platform and There's people all the time. They're like, "Oh, do you know who this is? What about?" I'm like, "I don't. I'm sorry. I have way too much going on in life to understand a lot of people. Unfortunately, I wish I could, but sorry, go on.
Gotcha. He's a grappler out of London. But he has a podcast and he has a leg lock instructional as well. And I don't remember the exact phrase, and I'm kind of waiting to use it in one of my YouTube videos. I wrote it down, so I was gonna like rewatch it before I used it. But like the basic theme behind it is I don't remember how it came up, but basically someone was asking him a question, like a very detailed question about what he showed in his leg lock instructional. And he was like, to be honest, I do it differently now. Like it's not like the same. So I think like if you watch a Gordon Ryan instructional or a Danaher instructional and you're so focused on like the right hand goes here and the left hand goes here, I think it's great and it will probably be better than what you were doing previously. But it's not necessarily the most optimal way, and they're probably doing it differently now, kind of thing. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that the little details you're going to improve over time, and you're probably going to do it differently a year from now than you're doing right now. But the overall theme and game plan is probably going to change less often, if that makes sense. So that's why I think the order of importance is the way I structured it.
So what about some cons? Like who should and shouldn't be watching instructionals?
Man, that's a good question. If I can't think of a person who shouldn't be watching an instructional, to be honest. At least from my seat, I have like instructionals blew my mind and opened up a whole nother world for me. So just even if like it's a day one beginner and they're interested in watching instructionals, I would say even if it's not like necessarily the best content or whatever, I still think it shows that they're like willing to learn and excited about it. And why would you try and like put that flame out kind of thing? So, and then if you're advanced, like you're just looking for different ways of doing things and you can filter through things that you like and dislike. So, from beginner people to advanced people, off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone who shouldn't be watching instructionals or like match footage. Like if you're legitimately trying to get better at jiu-jitsu, I feel like you should be watching competition footage and trying to compare it with instructionals.
Yeah. How should new practitioners, how do I say this? Like go through the weeds, like make sure that they're not wasting their money, because instructionals are expensive. It's not like all of them are super cheap, always on sale. How can a new practitioner know that they're not getting, they're buying snake oil in an instructional?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to be honest. Like there's a lot of marketing tactics, and it's easy to kind of drink the Kool-Aid on the latest thing. So I would say to ask maybe someone that you trust for like recommendations, and then maybe like the more specific you can be about it and say like, oh, I'm really interested in De La Riva and I want to learn some more things about De La Riva, and I'm really struggling when I'm trying to like off balance them like down to their hands or something like that. I just can't seem to like off balance the person very well from De La Riva. Then I feel like someone can like give you like a legitimate recommendation. But like I get asked all the time, like, what's the best instructional for beginner people? And it's like, dude, I don't know. Like if I can give you the generic answer, that's like, you should get one of the escape instructionals from Danaher or Gordon kind of thing. Like I feel like what 95% of people would say. But like maybe you're not interested in that and you're like, dude, I'm a wrestler. I just want to like double down on my wrestling and win some competitions. I just want to like learn how to smash people from side control. Then you probably shouldn't get that escape point. So I feel like it's hard to give like generic advice. And then as far as just like, spending your resources wisely, I would ask someone that you trust and try and be like specific about what you're trying to get out of the instructional. And I feel like that will at least give you like a better use of your resources.
Do you think that new practitioners or even blue belts, right? Because blue belts are still, lower belts. People get upset about that, but uh, but do you think that they should be focusing on what is being taught in class, or do you think they should get that curiosity and say if they see something on sale on BJJ Fanatics or Jiu-Jitsu X that they should go for that and then try that in class? Like, how do you think they should work with that dynamic?
Yeah, I think it's easier said than done, because I think a lot of people see the sale on BJJ Fanatics and they buy it and they start studying it, even though it has nothing to do with what they're studying in class.
Yeah.
So I think in an ideal world, which is probably not going to happen, but I think in an ideal world, you're studying something on BJJ Fanatics that links well with what you're studying in class. So like if you're working on, I don't know, like butterfly sweeps in class or whatever, you can get a BJJ Fanatics instructional that's about X guard or something like that. So like it's like both your feet are on the inside for a butterfly sweep, both your feet are on the inside for X guard. They link nicely with each other, and you're just kind of studying the 2 feet inside game. It's not like you're stepping on the toes of your instructor by being like, dude, I want to get really good at, like, I don't know, even De La Hiva. Like, you use De La Hiva as an example for this. Like, I want to get good at like an outside guard, but we're like studying inside guards right now. But then maybe, I guess you could make the argument like you can transfer. I don't know. I'm going down a rabbit hole right now. But basically, I think you understand what I'm saying. Yeah.
So focus on, primarily, you should be focusing on what's being taught in class, especially as a new practitioner. But don't step on your instructor toes if you do buy something that's not being taught in class. Because I don't know about you, but if I'm teaching someone how my welding or my trade is welding. Back when I was in the Navy. And so if I were to be teaching someone how to stick weld and then they came in and they were doing something else, I would be like, don't worry about that right now. I'm trying to teach you the very basics first, and then you can go off and explore these other ideas and concepts about metallurgy or whatever. That doesn't matter right now because you can't even put 2 pieces of metal together. So let's go ahead and ring our focus in a little bit. And that's like my big concern, especially because I try to create content for people that are new practitioners. And it's like you mentioned, it's hard to tell them not to, fan the flame a little bit and, when they're interested in these things. But I'm just so worried about people wasting needed space and wasting their time. And so it's a concern when people are like, oh man, I want to watch instructional. It's like, okay, well, you should do it. Yeah, if you're interested, you should definitely do it. But kind of keep it in the realm of what's going on in your academy right now. Because if you're going over De La Hiva in class, right, and then you go over to, I don't even know what else we could be talking about with De La Hiva, but like back attacks or something, and there's like no cohesiveness from that De La Hiva to that back attack, like you're not looking at crab riding or all these other things, then you're just wasting your time in my eyes, or in space and your instructor's time if you do that. And so that's just one thing that I get kind of concerned about is I want new practitioners to look at other information outside of their academy because it's incredibly valuable, but I don't want them to do it at the cost of not learning something that the instructor automatically knows would make them improve better. You know what I mean? Like that's one thing that really kind of concerns me sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a two-way street, and I think like instructors are getting better about realizing that their students are going to see other ways of doing things online and have the option of going down whatever rabbit hole they want. So it's kind of on the instructor to realize that that's the world that we live in right now, and to be more open and maybe even structure classes in a more open way to allow that like curiosity. But then it's also on the student to realize that these people showing the instructionals don't individually know who the student is. And the instructor is the one who individually knows the student and is trying to, walk that student down the jiu-jitsu journey.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of is like a two-way street. Like the students need to take that mindset, and the instructors also need to have the mindset as well that students are going to be able to do that as well. Yeah.
And I think this whole idea of the ecological method of teaching, and then, more conceptual teaching methods that kind of have been adopted more in jiu-jitsu recently, I think that's great for what we're talking about too, because it allows for that open conversation between technique and instruction and what's working and what's not. And I think you have more of the ability to wander outside of the box a little bit while bringing yourself back in. Because I know there's times when I'm in the middle of class and I'm trying things that I think I see in the middle of a technique that my professor's trying to teach me. And I'm like, well, let me try this real quick. And then, I don't want to like insult my professor by doing something that's not within what he's teaching right now. But it's like that. It's like, well, would this work?
Right.
I just want to kind of know, like, would this work? Like, but you don't want to stomp on someone's, curiosity when they're exploring a move. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say like one thing I try to like preface like a class if I teach is like, this is the way I'm doing it. If you like know a better way, or you want to like explore, or you want to like, I think they call it they do call it the reverse classroom model, where it's like basically like I'm going to show something, but if you're like, dude, I don't want to do that, I want to do this, or like, oh, I know a better way to do it, I'm going to do it that way. I think it honestly just like takes some of the burden off of the instructor. So me as a purple belt trying to instruct people that are often like higher rank than me that are coming to these classes, I would say it takes some of the burden off of me to know every answer. And that's, I think, important. And it's also just like, ease of mind for me when I'm going in to teach a class is like, you don't need to know every answer. And ideally your student is like, oh, I saw this thing from, Lachlan Giles showing it to do it this way. And it's like, oh, I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
Try it kind of thing. Let me know what you think. So it just kind of like gives you more freedom and takes some of that weight off of your shoulders. You don't have to be that like god of an instructor that knows everything,
Yeah. Well, even no one knows everything in jiu-jitsu. You might meet someone that thinks that they know almost everything, but there's new innovation every day in jiu-jitsu, and that's including in instructionals too. You shouldn't look at an instructional like at the end all be all of information when it comes to a certain technique or anything like that. Because like we mentioned earlier, there are some people out there that are, I don't really know if this is 90% of stuff that probably wouldn't work in real life, but they're making some sales doing it. So when you look at buying an instructional or you're analyzing it, what do you look for in one that makes it great? You know what I mean? You're like, man, that was a fantastic instructional. I gained a lot from it.
Most of it comes down to like the first introductory like section where they're just like explaining what they're doing and like the overall concept behind it. And if it completely changes like the way I think about a position, I know it's just really, really valuable. So that's kind of like the first thing. If they just kind of like hop in and they just start like doing techniques and like, oh, this is what I do if they do this, and then if they do this and they do that, I think it'll be valuable. I think you'll probably find little nuggets in there. You're like, oh, I've never thought of doing, a technique like that. Let me try it. But as far as just like reshaping the way you think about open guard or like side control or things like that, just like giving you like a very broad overview, I think that is kind of what takes an instructional from being like a good instructional to a great instructional, is they kind of just reshape your overall picture of the given position or technique.
Have you ever experienced the agony of sleepless nights when you're away from home? Well, let me tell you about a recent trip that I went on that became a sleep disaster. Picture this. You go on a thrilling adventure, leaving behind the comfort of your own bed. Unfortunately, also your beloved pillow. Little did I know the effect it would have on my sleep night after night, struggling to find that cozy, supportive feeling I had grown accustomed to. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, Travis, you get paid by Mummy Pillow to promote their brand and their products. And it's very true, I do, but that's only because after using it, I absolutely could not believe how big of an impact it had on my sleep. Mummy Pillow has been a godsend for me and my sleep. Not having it on that trip and sleeping with those hotel pillows was horrible. I wish I would have brought it with me. And with Mummy Pillows, you also get a travel bag that comes with your pillow. So don't be like me. Bring your pillow everywhere you go and enjoy your night of sleep. And let me tell you, coming back home and finally sinking into the embrace of that Mummy Pillow was like returning home to a long lost friend. It was like my pillow had whispered to me, "Welcome back, my dear friend. Rest well." Go to mvmisleep.com and use code ElbowsTight at checkout for 15% off. Once again, that's 15% off with code ElbowsTight at checkout. Sleep ambitiously with Mummy. So yeah, there's definitely more of a conceptual aspect to it to better understand the physical side of it. I think a lot of people nowadays, they hear conceptual jiu-jitsu or conceptual learning or whatever, and they might be put off by it because there might be a stigma around it right now, a little bit of like concepts. This is why we do it. Not, don't do the physical technique. Think about the conceptual side of it. But I think there's a lot of value to it. Like it's like anything. There will be a dogma when it comes to whatever. There's a lot of people out there that probably think conceptual is the only way to go. Whether it's don't teach a technique, teach them how to react in a situation or whatever. But I think concepts. We started learning more concepts in our academy, and it's really helped out quite a bit. It's we're talking about Jordan again. Jordan did a quick reel of ways to improve your head and arm choke because that's like one of his favorite things. And the whole thing wasn't about like getting to the head and arm. It was just what to look for when you're doing a head and arm. You know what I mean? Like it was like the conceptual side behind it. He's like, it doesn't matter how you lock your hands. It doesn't matter how you get there. The only thing that matters is the bite on the carotid. Like that is the only thing that matters. So however you can get a better bite on it is what's going to work better. And I was like, damn, dude, he didn't tell me how to get there at all, but I feel like I just learned a better way of doing a head and arm. So I've been like focusing on trying to get like his conceptual side of that technique down a little bit better. But I think when people buy instructionals, they don't really want to hear that. You know what I mean? Like they want, like you mentioned, they want the sexy stuff. People talking about like their ideas behind it usually isn't very sexy, especially when they're kind of like monotone like John Dana here and they're like very soft spoken. It's like fuck, man, I'm about to take a nap, dude. Can I get to the technique? But there is a lot of value in there, and I think people could learn a lot more from conversational jiu-jitsu like this and challenging their views and what's going on in their head, because you might have an idea of what's, like you mentioned, you might have an idea of like, no, this is the way it's done, and then someone's like, no, actually there's so much better way, and you're like like, oh my God. You're like, man, this is crazy. You guys are, for your podcast, 1-800 BJJ Help, you guys are sponsored by Lachlan Giles Metaverse, right? Like you guys have like a discount code for that. What are some of Submeta, yeah. What are some of your favorite platforms to watch instructionals or BJJ content on? Obviously, YouTube's probably going to be the biggest one because it's free, but what are some other good ones?
Yeah, I would say the three big ones right now that I use are BJJ Fanatics first and foremost. I think that's kind of like the kind of the staple. And then Submeta, which is Lachlan Giles, and then BJJ 365, which is Brandon McCaffrey's. Brandon McCaffrey's the 10th Planet guy. He announces a lot of events, so I find that one to be the most valuable as far as just like, I mean, what I'm kind of looking for is like what techniques he's showing there, because to me he's someone who gets to see a lot of high level competition and get in the back room at a lot of these places and get to talk to a lot of high level people and just kind of travel the world and see a ton of jiu-jitsu. So the techniques that he is showing, I imagine he has, like, I mean, it's just kind of filtered through his lens of being around like the best jiu-jitsu constantly. So I think that is pretty valuable. And then Lachlan is just like crazy. That dude is he's so technical and very dedicated to teaching. I feel like I think he's just like gone full like bored into the teaching aspect of it. And I don't think there's a better value as far as like spending your resources than getting the sub meta one. It's just like, I think it's $25 a month and you get like over 100 different courses, as opposed to like some of the BJJ Fanatics instructionals are like, I think Gordon's now are like $350 or something if they're not on sale. Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, they sell like hotcakes too.
Yeah.
So
Granted,
let's
they
go
do
in.
have a sale every other day, but
Yeah, I know, right? You're like, all right, 40% off of a $350. I'm like, still hundreds of dollars, but that guy also charges, I think it's like $200-$300 to even go to a seminar. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, do I pay the $300 for a seminar or do I pay $300 for replay value? It's like, you got to weigh that out. So let's go into how you kind of view instructionals in a sense of note taking or how your methods for watching them, because like you mentioned, you make content with them, and then you like the conceptual side to it. So how do you approach when you buy an instructional and then from start to end? Like how does that situation go for you? Taking notes? Are you chapterizing it somehow, or like how does it all work?
Yeah, so normally the thing that's on the front of my mind right now is Gordon Ryan instructionals, and I'm just going to use that as an example just to make this easier. And one thing I've been studying recently is open guard, so I'm going to use that as an example to make this easier.
Perfect.
But basically how I went about doing that is I'll start with Gordon's typically, and I'll watch his opening sequence where he talks about like the general strategy, and then I'll watch the rolling footage and I'll take notes in both of those sections, and then I'll go back and I'll watch like a decent amount of competition footage and try and see where those same sections that tend to happen a lot in the rolling footage were also happening in competition, and just kind of like try and highlight different sequences that tend to be the most common. And then when I'm watching the actual content of the instructional, like all the 8 hours of techniques, I'll kind of have the general overview painted, and I'll kind of know the generally where he tends to spend most of his time in competition and in the sparring footage. So then it kind of gives you a little filter to say like, okay, like this section right here I should really pay attention to because he did it like 9 times in the rolling footage, and he also does it like a bunch in competition. So I imagine this is like a pretty important section. And oftentimes he'll start off by saying, this is one of the most important techniques, like it's like, oh, okay, the clue is right there in front of it. Like, yeah. So
mental note.
Yeah, exactly. So that's generally how I try to approach it. And then I'll watch a lot of supplemental material. So I'll go on to like Lachlan's and I'll see the way he's doing a similar, like the same highlighted techniques that tend to happen a lot. I'll go and I'll see how Lachlan teaches it, and I'll be like, oh, he has like different details than Gordon has. I'll watch Danaher teach it. I'll watch Brandon teach it. I'll watch, like I've been studying a lot of like Mikey Musumeci instructionals for this open guard stuff. Mateusz Szczecinski, like just different people. I'll just like watch to see if they have like little onesie, twosie details that I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll just kind of throw it in. But yeah, for the most part, it's like kind of getting the framework from Danaher and Gordon, and then kind of piecing other people's little tips and tricks on top of that.
So how do you approach note taking for this? Because it sounds like you do a lot of jumping around when you see something that interests you. How is your should people take notes when they're watching instructionals, and how do you take notes, or how do you keep everything in line so it's not a bowl of spaghetti up there?
Yeah, I used to not take notes, to be honest. But then once I started doing this YouTube channel, I started to take more notes, just so I could have a quick reference when I wanted to like put something in a video. So I would say the YouTube channel has kept me more disciplined as far as my note taking, but just as like a general, like I'm new to note taking is basically what I'm saying. And previously, I'd say like um, all I was doing was just using the Notes app on my phone and just taking a bunch of notes. And I would just have like an open guard one, and then I'd have like a De La Hiva one, and I'll just write like Mikey De La Hiva instructional, and then I would just say like section 3, he talks about like when you off balance them to their butt, you do this or whatever, you know. So it would be like kind of unorganized a bit, yeah, kind of a little all over the place, but yeah, I'm working on fixing that hopefully, and making it available. Like, yeah, I don't know if we want to get into that now, but yeah, basically, like I'm trying to become more organized with my note taking, especially for match footage, and then hopefully that'll bleed over into instructional footage as well eventually. But just as far as like general note taking for other people, I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would have like really good advice, to be honest. Like I wouldn't say my method is like good. I would say it's kind of a little all over the place. And the YouTube channel kind of forces me to be a little more honest with it. And yeah, it's not something I'm good at though, I would say.
Hey, practice makes perfect, right? Or
Yeah.
progression, and then progression makes perfect. You kind of alluded to it in there, though. You do have the database coming out, and that's kind of why I wanted to ask about your note taking, because you mentioned on your YouTube channel that you have pages of notes for each YouTube video or whatnot that you're putting into it. You want to tell people at home what this platform is, because I think it's an amazing idea, and people are gonna find so much value in it.
Thank you. Yeah. So basically, the idea behind it was I started to kind of like take a bunch of statistical information too, as far as like different regions of ADCC trials, and saying like, oh, this submission was the most common in Asia, and then this submission was the most common in Europe, and whatever. Just trying to get like more statistical data. And that, along with all of the notes that I was taking for each match, is just like very difficult to keep track of everything. So I just thought it would be nice to have like an easily searchable like database. I didn't really know what that would entail, and it's turned out to be a lot more work than I imagined it would be. But yeah, the idea was just like make myself some sort of like database that I could just search, and it would have like my notes in it in an organized way, and I could search through my notes more effectively, and also be able to like display graphs of like what I wanted to display in my YouTube videos. And then luckily, one of my the people I do jiu-jitsu with here is a developer, so he and I basically worked it out, and he started developing this database. And yeah, so basically what it kind of came to after it's all said and done is basically this version 1 is going to have like very limited graphs and not very statistic oriented, just kind of more basic statistics, like the general submission numbers kind of thing. But it's going to be primarily focused on the notes search pretty much. So you could search like guard retention from north-south, and every time I have like written guard retention and north-south in a note from a match, it's going to pop up with a timestamp, so you can basically better navigate through flow grappling pretty much, because all we're doing is ADCC matches, and all the ADCC matches are on flow. So if you don't have flow, it's pretty much a useless tool. But if you do have flow, hopefully it will help you better find the match footage that you're looking for. And yeah, basically, again, I just made it for myself, and hopefully other people find it valuable. But yeah, that's the basic idea behind it.
Do you have a name for it yet?
Right now it's called the Outlier Database. Yeah.
Sounds pretty legit, man. I'm excited. I don't have Flow, but I think the little bit that you showed, I was like, oh man, this is super cool. There's another thing out there, kind of similar to what you're talking about, Way of BJJ. I don't know if you've heard of that, but they're kind of like doing similar things, but it's kind of like from my understanding, is it's going to be like a tree. Like you could say like, okay, pull De La Hiva, and then what did they do? And it's kind of like, well, he grabs my foot, so you go to grab your foot and how to counter that, and it like links YouTube videos on how to do each technique or each scenario. And I think that when you said that, I was like, oh man, that's like super legit that you're coming up with this too, because I think it's a very big gap in the market right now for people, especially with oh man, how much content we have out there for jujitsu. I wanted to get, speaking of that, I wanted to get your take on like analysis or a paralysis by analysis. Like, do you ever fear that you're gonna just overthink stuff way too much because of what you do, that it might start affecting you?
Every day. Every
Yeah.
day. Yeah, honestly, like I don't get to train jujitsu all that much. I would say like maybe twice a week, and even those like twice a week, I'm like teaching, so like I'm not really like training all that much. So, yeah, like it's tough because I'm like studying it all day, and then I don't get to practice it all that much. So it's a lot of like when you're in the situation, just trying to like think a lot as opposed to reacting. So, yeah, I would say I get paralysis by analysis pretty much every time I roll nowadays.
Do you record your footage or your rolling?
It goes off and on. I
Same.
personally don't, but these other two gentlemen in our school, they basically like run our Instagram page for the jiu-jitsu school. So, yeah, they record it and like make little clips of the highlights and stuff. And they'll send, like if I want to see it, they'll send like the full blown videos. So, it's usually available if I want it, but yeah, I don't tend to record my own roles.
There's a lot of, I mean, you offer the service too of reviewing people's roles, right behind your paid community and whatnot. And I think that's a very valuable tool because, uh, seeing what you're doing, I talk about this all the time. Seeing what you're doing during a role, you may think in your mind like, man, I am crushing it during this part right here. Like I got great frames. Then you rewatch it and you're like, I was laying there like a starfish. In my head, that's not what was happening. I think that was the big eye opener. Um, and a lot of content creators out on YouTube now. I mean, there's a lot of small content creators out on YouTube now when it comes to jujitsu that do their own rolling footage breakdown, much like Jordan we talked about earlier. And it's cool seeing people do that, but I think it's starting this own like micro instructional environment. You know what I mean? Where everyone that has a platform now wants to release their own instructional on what they want. And I mean, it's good and bad. I mean, obviously, there's knowledge is knowledge, and if you can break it down to a point to where it's beneficial to someone or helps people, I think it's a great idea. But what do you think about this new kind of like, sign up for my newsletter and I'll give you this instructional? I know you've done it too, and I'm not bashing on anyone for doing it. If I think it's like I mentioned, if you have good knowledge and you can help people, then do it. I don't. I suck at jujitsu, so it's no one will be learning my techniques for a newsletter. But how do you feel like? What do you think like the next step is for this kind of micro instructional environment that's starting to come out with content creators?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. For me, I would say that there's always been, how do I want to answer this? Like, I would say like for me, like as far as like the whole like email thing and stuff like that, like I just found out about. I feel like it's one of those things where like you just find out about a car and then like all of a sudden you're starting to see it everywhere. Maybe I was just like oblivious to it before, But I just found out that like, oh, it's probably a good idea to like start collecting people's emails and like just
Same,
in
I'm
case
trying.
something happens with YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe I should start trying that. And then like now I literally see like everyone doing it. So like
That's what I'm saying. Like I was thinking about it
yeah.
too, and I was like, man, I don't want to do that. Like I feel like everyone in the jiu-jitsu content creation space is kind of like, hey, sign up for my newsletter, get this free ebook that I wrote about, or this one super simple technique. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. I gotta find something else I gotta do. But go on, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. But yeah, I also do see like there's a reason why people do it. So like, yeah, I get the pros and cons, but yeah, I'm still trying to navigate through that as well on my end. So, sorry, I kind of like lost my last. Can you rephrase the question real quick?
Oh,
I
so
just
what
kinda,
do you
like,
think
brushed it.
about
Yeah.
this micro instructional like content creator instructional thing, and then like where's it going? Like how do you feel about people doing it and whatnot?
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I just feel like it's just going to become harder and harder for people to navigate and find the good information. So basically, the kind of like tagline that we were trying to like come up with, we were trying to come up with a tagline for this outlier database thing, and basically what we came down to was what we're trying to do is help people overcome the overwhelm. And I
Hmm.
think the overwhelm problem is just going to keep getting more and more difficult to solve. And there's going to be more and more content for you to watch, and it's going to be harder and harder for you to find the thing that you're looking for. So basically, what I feel like, my YouTube channel and hopefully what this database helps solve is giving people like a tool to help them navigate through the overwhelm and get to what they're looking for quickly. Um, so yeah, that I think is going to be a harder and harder problem to deal with, and hopefully we're able to get ahead of it and help people navigate through it.
People. I mean, that's the thing with Instagram or YouTube or the internet. Really, is everyone can have a stage to put out information and look like a subject matter expert. Uh, and that's like you don't want to be the one to put something out, then all of a sudden you get hate mail from everyone watching it like, bro, that is trash. Like what are you what are you talking about, man? How do you handle I don't know if you have much hate because or a lot of haters because your stuff is, I mean, it's great, but how do you deal with like the online universe of content creation and good and bad?
Yeah, no, when especially when I have paid stuff, like the only thing I've had paid has been my one instructional that I put out, and I made sure to give people like a money back guarantee, and I've refunded a handful of people. I just really did not want to take people's money that felt like they didn't get what they wanted. Um, so if someone like is genuinely unhappy, I really think it's important to just like give them their money back or refund them or just try and like make things right. Um, but as far as like free content goes, I do get my fair share of hate, especially starting out. I didn't know what this was, but I got a lot of comments. And it wasn't like if it's just like one comment, it's like kind of like hurtful, but it's like okay, I can move on. But if there's a lot of comments saying it, it's like okay, maybe I should start to
Might be
address
true.
this. Yeah. And I had to Google it because I didn't know what it was. And a lot of people were saying that I had vocal fry. And I still think I have it. I'm trying to work on it a bit more. Do you know what that is?
Is that the at the end of when you talk, kind of like
Yes.
a valley girl thing? I guess you could kind of not calling you a valley
Exactly.
girl. I promise. I'm sorry, but that's the first thing coming up from the West Coast, the Bay Area, right? You get that fry at the end of words. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, what I've read and what I've learned was that as you're talking, if you get like really excited and you're talking about something, and you just keep talking about something and you forget to breathe, and as you start to run out of breath, now your voice starts to get a little raspy, and then you start to get that vocal fry, and then the things start to get worse and worse and worse. So basically, what I've tried to do now is I take like a deep breath, and then I start to speak into my microphone when I'm recording to my YouTube videos. And I only speak for like 5 to 7 seconds until I have to breathe again. I like never make a long sequence anymore because of
You're like,
hate
all right,
comments.
here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Okay, in this part, we need to go grab the tickets.
Trying to minimize the vocal fry. I definitely think it's still there, but yeah, that's like, I think that's how I kind of navigated it, to be honest, is like, I obviously get a lot of hate because Gordon Ryan gets a lot of hate, and I'm like the biggest Gordon Ryan fanboy on the internet. So I get some misdirected Gordon Ryan hate, but that
You're like, I'm actually not him. This is just me breaking. like, I have no affiliation with Gordon Ryan, man. You calm down.
Yeah, but I love Gordon Ryan, and I think the more he competes, the better we all are gonna be as far as jiu-jitsu goes. So I think that's like the two biggest hate comments that I feel like I get are stop making Gordon Ryan videos, talk about something else, and then 2, your vocal fry is impossible to listen to. I can't believe anyone has subscribed to this YouTube channel.
You're like, well, the good thing is the internet. So if you don't like it, you don't have to listen to me. It's like, I don't think it's that bad. It's never been a point to where when I was like, Jesus, Jake, take a breath. Like I didn't even realize. I just think it's your voice. Like it's not like I sound like a freaking idiot most of the time. Like I got super bad allergies, so I sound nasally a lot. I don't know how anyone listens to me talk for an hour. I appreciate everyone at home that does, but it's like you're gonna have haters no matter what you do. If you put yourself out there on the internet, there's gonna be someone out there that's gonna have something negative to say. But like we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, having that message that's bigger than yourself and looking to help others really allows you to look past the haters because you're not making content for them anyways, obviously, right? If they, let me rephrase that. If someone's giving you constructive criticism, that's different, right? Like you could take the vocal fry as constructive criticism if delivered in the right method, right? If someone just says like, dude, your voice is annoying, then that's not very constructive and you're probably not making content for them anyways. But if someone watches the video and they're like, hey, I think you can improve on this, then that's something different, right? And I think that's one thing that people need more of, to tell you the truth. Not haters. I'm not saying you guys need more haters, but I think people, even within the jiu-jitsu community, could use more constructive criticism and take it seriously because we're not all perfect. Not everyone knows everything. Not every interview that I do is going to be the best. Not every episode I do is going to be the best. And I'm okay with that. I've been doing this for a long time now. But I feel like there's a lot of people, especially within jiu-jitsu, if you try to like correct them, even if you're a lower belt, if I go up to like a purple or brown belt, I'm like, hey man, that was more of a crank. They're like, oh, you're just saying that because I submitted you. Like, I'm not saying that, but kind of. But it really was. Like there's this like whole stigma of like you can't correct up. Like you can only correct down. So, but Jake, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, man. It was a blast of a conversation. I'm so glad we did this. We're gonna have to do it again sometime. Where can people find you at if they want to follow you or watch your journey?
Yeah, YouTube, Instagram. Oh, Instagram confuses a lot of people actually. I'm short-haired Jake on Instagram, which is a whole nother story, but yeah, I'm short-haired Jake on Instagram. YouTube is Less Impressed, More Involved BJJ, and yeah, that's pretty much the two platforms.
Yeah, go check out his videos. They're great. Be on the lookout for his database if you guys are looking for more of an analysis about jiu-jitsu, like you mentioned before. Everything's going to be down in the description below. If you guys have made it this far, you made it into EBI overtime, let me know. I greatly appreciate everyone at home. Make sure you go follow Jake, go watch his YouTube channels, and we'll be able... Oh, also, Jake, I can't believe I almost forgot. What would your one piece of advice be for a brand new white belt starting jiu-jitsu?
My one piece of advice would probably just be consistency, and to show up consistently, and Yeah, that'd probably be it.
Y-
Just be consistent.
Wait, is there a number that comes to mind when you talk about consistency?
Not necessarily. I think it probably just depends on people's like life and their goals. That number is going to dictate a lot of that. But I would just say like if you're going to, 2 classes a week, and then you don't go for a month, and then you go for 2 classes a week again for a month, you're probably not going to get very, very good. So yeah, if you can go to, 1 class a week and then 2 classes next week, and then 1 class and then 2 classes, and that's like a more sustainable schedule, then just do that. But like, just try and go at least once a week, I would say, and just keep showing up, kind of thing. So.
Absolutely. All right, Jake, for real this time. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone go check them out. Everything's going to be down in the description below. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching at home. And remember, no oil checks here. Peace.